Spiritual formation in synergy, exploring, integrating and innovating together the path to becoming Christ-like. So hey everybody, welcome to our latest Synergy Spiritual Formation podcast. Great to be with you today and also to be joined by Beth and Ruth. I'll introduce them in a minute, let them say hello, a little bit about themselves. Usually on our podcast series, we are talking about our own spiritual formation and giving some time to reflect on that. Today, we're actually we are talking a little bit about that, but we're also talking about how to make spaces and places for other people to engage and acknowledge the spiritual formation journey. So I'd like to say hi to Ruth Rice here. Hi, Ruth, great to have you with us. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about where you're dialing in from today and what you're bringing to the podcast?
Hey, and nice to see you, Gaynor and Beth. I'm Ruth Rice. I'm here in Nottingham. I started a charity here about we started a wellbeing cafe here about 11 years ago, coming out of my own mental health journey, which wasn't great. And the cafe's still going. It's lovely. It's run by a local church. And about 9 years ago, set up a charity called Renew Wellbeing, which helps other churches do something similar around three simple principles of just showing up and praying and of working with mental health teams. We're about 300 centres now nationally, and it's a great fun thing to do. And I'm here because you invited me, Gaynor.
Great. Thanks so much. And Beth, great to have you with us. Do you want to just say a little bit about yourself, Beth?
Yeah, I'm Beth, and I am one of the leaders at Raglan Road Church in Smethwick. And we have a cafe, Renew Wellbeing Cafe, thanks to Ruth and her encouragement and her vision for people's well-being. And so that's how I know Ruth. And then I met yourself, Gaynor, and Ruth at a retreat recently. So hi to you both, and it's lovely to see you again.
Yeah, I forgot to mention about the retreat. Yeah, we were just in Derbyshire about a month or so ago on our Synergy retreat, which was a great time. So we're obviously talking a lot about the links between well-being and our spirituality. And, we come across well-being in all sorts of walks of life and places and spaces, and we're reading about it, we're seeing about it, we've participated in perhaps different activities to do with our well-being, even outside of the church as well. So Ruth, can you just tell me a little bit about Renew Wellbeing? Kind of what's it all about in a nutshell, and how did it come about as well?
Yeah, so about 15 years ago, I had a breakdown. So that's the that's the nutshell bit. And I was in church leadership. I was also, I've got 3 kids, and I was husband, working full time as a teacher, lay leading a local church, and just wore myself out. So it was burnout. And I did find church really tricky at that time. And I also realised there were loads of other people struggling with their mental health who weren't necessarily beating a path to our doors. And yet, the stuff of the gospel is the stuff of well-being. So eventually, after a long bit of story, coming out of that sort of really awful low year, I asked the church to help me to set up a space that would have been what I needed when I wasn't well and stuck in bed on my own. And what I needed was somewhere to do the hobbies and activities that did my well-being good, where there were people to also help me think about taking a bit of time for myself. Somewhere to practice rhythms and habits of prayer that weren't praying for stuff, but practicing God's presence. And somewhere where you might be able to get a bit of access to mental health care, but without having to go for a clinical sort of appointment. And it just felt like, oh, what if that could be available? And I'd been to loads of retreat houses and stuff and thought, wow, why have I driven so many miles to find the presence of God, and I'm leading a church? Wouldn't it be great if people could happen upon the presence of God on the high street, just going in for a cuppa and coming out having met with God? So that was the sort of start of it here in Nottingham. And we didn't have a church building, so we set up in a local sort of cafe space, took on a little cafe space, and it's just lovely. People bring a hobby, share a hobby, any faith and none, no proselytizing, people sitting around doing colouring in and furniture restoration, bit of knitting, whatever's good for your well-being, bring it, share it. And then attach to that a prayer space where you can join in with a little prayer at the beginning, the middle, the end, or you can go and just sit in the quiet and reflect and meet with God. So these were the sort of, and there are also mental health systems quite like these sort of spaces run by volunteers because they're nice and simple and we're not trying to fix anyone. And in a way, then it is about our own formation as well as about evangelism. It's the whole caboodle, you know. It's like actually our mental and emotional health is a shared and common language that brings us together in a space where we go, yeah, I don't have the answers, but can we practice this well-being thing together? So that's what it's about. And I suppose after setting up the first one and people seeing how much good it had done me personally, other churches were going, oh, can you help us set one up? And I couldn't in the end keep the day job going and help other churches without making myself ill again. So ended up with Cinnamon Network's help setting up Renew Wellbeing as a charity 9 years ago, and then sort of packaging some training that could help people to join in, which then during pandemic went online, of course, and in a way that enabled churches to get hold of it more easily.
Yeah, brilliant. Great. Thanks for a great snapshot of Renew Wellbeing. So, and you just mentioned about the gospel or well-being being at the heart of the gospel. Now, maybe we've kind of more heard the gospel about sort of like, I suppose, you know, the salvation process or, you know, I suppose expressing itself in worship, in mission, in being part of community. I'm not sure we talked that much about the invitation to Christ being involving our well-being. So what's well-being got to do with the gospel?
So the definition of well-being is tricky, isn't it? Because it's such a buzzword. But I think that Hebrew word shalom, which we translate as peace, is better translated well-being. It's that wholeness. It's the all things belong here. You know, it's okay, you're not okay. There's joy, there's sorrow. This space where God holds everything. I sometimes hold a cup in my hands and go, that's like my life held within the hands of God who is well-being. And so, you know, what Jesus came and did on the cross, what the Holy Spirit brings to us, who the Father is to us, that's the wholeness, almost like this encircling of well-being, and inviting people, including people who don't know him yet, into that story enables us to find all of life there. And therefore, when I wasn't well, to have cried out to God just to heal me. You know, I was in a charismatic Baptist setting. It was like, quickly get this away or I can't be useful. And to meet with God in that moment and for him to whisper to me, Ruth, I could not love you anymore. I'll never love you any less. That feels like I was reborn. You know, that's the gospel for me.
Yeah.
There's no pressure on me to perform. I am loved and therefore I get to join in with this mission of God. But I don't have to. He's God. I'm not. It was such a relief to realise that. And it did take a breakdown for me to join in with the God who is well-being. And I'm so passionate about not just people outside of the church, but people within the church understanding how good the good news is really for their own mental and emotional health.
Yeah, brilliant. And, you know, without wishing a breakdown on you, I love the way in which your lived experience has brought you to this place. It's not like you just had an idea about what you think other people need, but actually you just, you know, it's about realizing the need within ourselves. And it's not about, you know, putting something on somebody, but it's actually about experiencing that together, which I think is really important. And I think in terms of peace, I mean, what more does the world need at the moment? What more do individuals need at the moment? Not peace and quiet, perhaps. Well, maybe peace and quiet, that's part of it. But just that really deep down sense of like, actually, this is going to be okay. I'm okay. You're okay. It's okay. You know, I'm still here.
Also, I think also, Gaynor, it's that sense that actually that this isn't okay and that's why I feel like this, and actually no, this war is not okay and that's why I feel like this, and the sense that this isn't all there is, and that life is difficult, and sometimes we struggle, that God has never left us, never will. He's always with us. I kind of love you know, when Jesus was asleep in the boat and the disciples had a big old panic and we get all excited about him calming the storm. I kind of think the bigger miracle would have been if they lay down next to him and went to sleep. You know, there's something about, do we trust God enough to know this too shall pass? And that was what happened to me during a breakdown. Was I think I wrote in my journal at one point, I think I'd rather have this intimacy than get my health back. And it was kind of It was a
Right.
moment. It's nice to have both, but it was a moment for me of realizing that we put so much emphasis on kind of physical healing and healing in the way it's all got to be better and nice, that actually this sense of shalom is even within the storm, he never leaves us. He's always with us.
Yeah.
And some of the greater miracles happen right off stage where you can't see what's happening. So that I love that for people who are struggling with their mental health to be honored and listened to and you know that there's gift within every person
Yeah,
that God's put on
absolutely.
the planet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, brilliant. Great. And it comes against the notion that you have to have all your ducks in a row before God can do
yeah,
something in
yeah.
us and through
Some of
us.
my ducks are definitely pigeons. You know that one, don't you? So
Yeah, brilliant. I've got some other versions of that, but I won't repeat in public.
I know, best not.
So Beth, let's tell me a little bit more about, like, okay, in a Renew Wellbeing kind of session, if you like, what does it look like? What are some of the elements? And kind of, what do those things do, I suppose? Because we can prepare a space, can't we, for people? But actually, what happens in my experience, not in Renew Wellbeing, but in other places, what happens in that room can be 30 different things all at the same time for people. So, but just tell me a little bit about kind of for you what it looks like there and some of the things that people might experience or participate with.
Yeah, so one of the things that drew me was the not having to fix, the not having to host and busy around everybody. It's also about my well-being as well as everyone else's well-being. And so we set up the space as simply as we can, with resource table, with so you'll come in and we've got a resource table. So we've got things about Renew, but we've also, and sort of some of the prayer rhythms, but we've also got links to the local council and different signposting there. So it's all about people facilitating and leading it themselves, really. Then we have a drink setup where people can help themselves to drink. So it's all about empowering the person to be themselves in that space. Then we have a few tables with different activities, and it's about us enjoying as a group time out. This is permission to just be. And I think that's what we try and create in our space. People that come in, a lot of people go, wow, this is so peaceful. We should have more of these places. So we have calm music on in the background with some videos, often with streams or nice pictures, or just we're trying to create a space where we know that we all need our mental well-being tended to in the presence of God, and it's about bringing Jesus ourselves. One of the things that Ruth's really key about is God's presence in the place, and so it's about us being present with God in that place, not trying to be something, but remembering also that we've got Christ in us, the hope of glory. We are bringing His presence into that place. And then we have just a nice shielded off area, which is our peaceful place where we go and we just do one rhythm of prayer in our session. So we invite people and it's totally optional. And I love that. And I often say to people, look, you can just stay and do your activity, or you can come in and you can be with us. And, people that come in and go, wow, that was just so peaceful. That was just so calming. That was just so still. Um, so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing people said, it's been peaceful. That's the word that more people have used over the space than anything else when they've come in. We have a gentleman that comes in that brings his own things, brings his own painting. He says, oh, I come here because I can relax and concentrate and paint in an environment that is welcoming. So he's seeing people, but it's also calming and he can have his own space. So it's really the people who come in make that space, and it's about them making that space, them doing what they enjoy, and also for the host giving them full permission. This is a fun time as well. This is a time for us. This is a time for us to enjoy. And I think that was quite hard to begin with the guilty feeling that we were doing things we enjoyed. So we were doing puzzles or painting, like, oh, but is this allowed? We're supposed to be working. But no. Permission is fully given to relax and enjoy. And we're not there to fix. We're there to facilitate. We're there to be His presence and be ourselves. And I think that's how we set our session up.
Yeah, brilliant. That sounds good. I think it's so important to not just be the host all the time, but be the guest. And maybe in Renew Wellbeing, there's something of being the host and the guest at the same time. Because I think often, perhaps the narrative that we hear a lot is that we have to, the church, Christians have to host things. We have to be like, we do organize quite a lot of things, don't we, in the community? But also, if you look in the Gospels, I think Jesus was a guest more often than not. And so I think it's a good practice, isn't it, to be a guest and to, as you say, like, not just do these activities at the same time as people, but actually engage in our own formation at the same time. So just on that, Beth, have you got any you mentioned about the gent who sort of, lots of people who say that it's a place of peace. Have you got any other stories about people where, they've just really encountered Christ in that place in a powerful way? Have you got any stories to tell?
I think I'd probably have to give my own testimony on that. I think when we were coming into thinking about Renew Wellbeing, in the past we'd done cafes where you're active, you're busy, you're serving everyone, you make sure everyone's okay, you're being just like the full host, like the Martha, rushing around doing everything. And when through the pandemic, I'd been linking in with some of the things that Ruth was doing. And Gareth, my husband, knew about Ruth and kept saying, Beth, you'll love it, get involved. And I was like, I can't just take on another thing. I'm not sure I've got capacity. And then we went to a retreat centre just before COVID hit. And something that Ruth had put in a book, which I read later, resonated with me, which was, why do we have to travel out to beautiful places to experience God? Because God is God everywhere, and God is wanting to meet us where we're at. And so for me personally, it was about finding a place and then sharing that with others to find this place of well-being, whilst also inviting a community in with you to do it together. And also to equip people when we pray and we do the community prayer in the prayer space. It's about us joining together, but everybody participating, everybody learning how to pray together very simply but powerfully. And they can do that then at home. They don't need me. They don't need anyone else. They can do that and have a relationship with God themselves. And I think for me, just that permission to slow down and to look after my own well-being has probably really helped me in finding God personally to love me in every season, in every place I'm at, and just to be able to just be. I think for me has really helped me to know that, like you were saying, you so often want to pray things out instantly, and God is an instant God as well. And I've had instant things happen, and I'm like, yay, I want that every time. But sometimes the journey makes us process things and work through things far more healthily and far better for our longer term well-being and for us then helping others. So for my personal journey, it's been about sitting in my own brokenness and allowing God to speak and move me gently along without the pressure to be something or to have to perform. And so I think that's where Renew Wellbeing's been really good about rhythms. And they do a retreat day once a month, and it's good just to have those opportunities to be ourselves whilst learning alongside others. So I think it's about finding ourselves in God in a quiet shared space is really powerful.
Brilliant. Great. Just going back to prayer then, Ruth, what could the sort of prayer time look like? Beth mentioned about praying in a simple and powerful way. How do you facilitate that?
So when I wasn't well, prayer for me had been extemporary prayer, but actually probably more like worrying with your eyes shut, great big list of stuff. And also you got so consumed by the one thing that felt wrong with you or with somebody else that it became hard to pray in a more rounded way. And I found that the Psalms really helpful during that time. I found myself within them and kind of learnt some rhythms and habits of prayer from a variety of places. And what we've gone for in Renew Wellbeing is the simplest form of just being in God's presence. And to be honest, when you're not well, and if anyone's been through this, they'll know this, extemporary prayer, the make it up as you go along prayer, just disappears. You've got no words. There's nothing. There's like an emptiness where it used to be God. And to have something ancient and steady to hold on to, some liturgy, if you like, was really helpful to me, and not part of my background at all. So we use Psalm 103, first 4 verses, every single morning. In fact, for the last 15 years, I have used that prayer every single morning. It's not the only way I pray, but it's the simplest way I pray. So bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Pause. Invite people to speak out his name, to think of the character of God. And then bless the Lord, oh my soul, forget not all his benefits. Again, thanking him for stuff. Then it's he forgives all our sin. We do that in the quiet. He heals our diseases. We bring those who are broken to him. We don't tend to encourage the laying on of hands, the prayer for healing from mental health issues. It can get a bit coercive. We so want people to be well. And I had a lot of this when I wasn't well. There's a lot of patting, and unsolicited praying. But allowing people to come to the God who is healer themselves and ask for what they feel ready for is something we do every day. And then bringing our broken world to him, and then coming into land with, he crowns us with love and compassion. For me, that's a memory of that time when he said how much he loved me, and just reminding myself, I don't need to earn this, and starting our day with love and compassion as our watchword. And then a lot of centres will then pause in the middle of the session, pray the Lord's Prayer, but in a similar way where they pause and use it as a pattern. And then encourage people, if they're doing an out loud prayer, to do just a word or a sentence. That can be fun for Christians who've been on the road a long time. And at the end of the day, the end of the session, maybe examine, which is that ancient practice of rewinding the day, of going back over the day and looking for signs of God's love and beauty, and letting go of what was not lovely and beautiful, and receiving forgiveness, and taking one thing you've learned to carry into the next day. They're lovely habits for my daily life. They're not just the things I do on a Renew day. These are the things that keep me steady, even on a bad day, of coming into the presence of God. So it's like a new monasticism almost. It's a way to pray that is so simple it becomes memorable. And then it can lead you into a real rich way of praying, actually, that anyone can join in with.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I suppose, encouraging people to adopt habits in the everyday, as you say, not just when they're at the Renew Wellbeing Cafe, but, just at any time and space in their life where they need to pray, then there are prayers there that they can use. And perhaps for some people who have come from an Anglican or a Catholic church background, liturgy actually isn't foreign to them and might bring something of that reminder. I think of maybe for some people who have been part of church communities before, brings a little bit of a reminder of something and a familiarity to them as well. And I'm a great believer in looking to the historical church for for practices which have been adopted throughout the centuries.
I think what I found, Gaynor, too, is that people really, really want to pray.
Yeah.
That when we do our extemporary make it we go along prayer, they assume that you have to be a certain sort of person or clever with words to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so people don't know it's okay for anyone to pray. I remember this 85-year-old gentleman who'd been in the church nearly all his life saying to me, that's the first time I've said a prayer out loud, because it was just a sentence. You gave me permission to do that. I think we're sometimes disabling people from being able to simply pray because we're trying to make it a bit more laid back and cool, and actually allowing people. When the disciples asked Jesus how to pray, he taught them a prayer. And actually, there's nothing wrong with set prayer that can lead us into open sort of expression of prayer. And there's room for all of it. It's not, like I say, it's not the only way we pray. But why would we not simplify it so that anyone could join in? Because our communities genuinely want to pray. And we've just personally seen more people come to faith through just praying and then meeting with God, and then us backfilling who it was they met with, And I just think, we're sometimes answering questions people aren't even asking in our courses and things, and inviting people into the rhythms of prayer with us, opening prayer spaces is probably the most evangelistic thing I've ever been involved in my life.
Brilliant. Yeah, you don't have to understand prayer to pray, do you? I love that. Yeah. So Beth, you mentioned also about retreat days. What do they look like if they look different to kind of usual Renew sessions?
I think the beauty is that anyone from anywhere can connect in. It's on Zoom. And so, or you can do it in groups, and that's something that we're seeking to hopefully do in the future in our church, is to open up a facility where people can come and meet and have lunch together. But basically, we do the normal 9 o'clock prayer with Ruth or whoever's leading that day, and then Ruth leads us in a retreat. So she'll read some scripture and give some. But it's generally she gives some pointers, but it's about us having time sat at home or in a cafe or on a walk, connecting with God ourselves. And so she encourages us to read the scripture a couple of times through, see what comes out. What it's like almost like a study yourself with God, but you've got these other people. Then at 12 o'clock you rejoin, and we do midday prayer, and then we have a little chat. Does someone want to share? What did you find? And it's just nice because you're doing community, but you're also doing it on your own. And I sort of was thinking about it, and it's a bit like a bring and share lunch, where you end up with a feast on the table at lunchtime as people bring things. It might be the same, similar to you, and it adds to what you've been thinking, or it can be something totally different, or sometimes people draw or do a poem or have done something totally for themselves in the morning, and it's just refreshed them and they share it. And so it's all about looking after our whole selves in the presence of God. And then we have the after. I don't normally make the 3 o'clock because I have school run, but then they do a 3 o'clock, and again a similar thing. Talk about do people want to share things, bring things, share them together. So it's doing community together across the whole of the UK, but also it's about doing it yourself. So it's blending the two together, where you're having your own space. Sometimes, to sit quietly is really difficult, and you need to just have something else to do and do things that you enjoy. And it's about a retreat in all its ways. It's about retreating for ourselves to have good well-being and to treat ourselves with nice things, but also to, most importantly, treat ourselves with time out where we're saying, Lord, I'm here, speak to me.
Yeah, great. I love that. I love the, not just, like we were saying at the beginning, not just the individual focus, but the community focus. I think sometimes spiritual formation could be seen as quite an individual thing, but it's absolutely rooted in community, isn't it? So just kind of like bringing things into land a little bit. So Ruth, if some of our Synergy churches or people in Synergy churches are listening and they're like, oh, that sounds really good, I wonder if that's something that we should get involved with. How can they go about that? And are there some things that are useful to like think about before I suppose investigating Renew Wellbeing a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's dead simple. I do think the idea of the gospel of well-being is worth a think, and also being honest about your own journey, your own story, asking yourself the question: what does well-being look like for me? What are my habits in my life, in my diary, in my prayer life that actually I could share with somebody else if they asked what did me good? So that's a starting point, maybe. But actually, our training goes through all that anyway. It's not really training; it's more like untraining. It's all on the website, renewwellbeing.org.uk. There's a few books out there that I accidentally wrote. I don't know what happened. I don't really see myself as an author at all, but they're more to enable people to get on board with the story. So there's the sort of starting point there would be a book called Slow Down, Show Up and Pray, commonly referred to as Shut Up and Pray. But it's got this sort of my story, which is a very ordinary story. Nothing dramatic happened, but just, kind of opening up the fact that even though Jesus, you can still struggle with your mental health, and not being embarrassed or ashamed about that, but about seeing that as an opportunity to engage with others, with your community, and with God himself. And then there's some stuff around the A to Z of wellbeing for children as well. And just more recently, one about sort of culture shifts within the church. So just Googling Ruth Rice and having a look on there on Amazon to see what books are out there, you could do that. But the training takes about an hour and a half. It's little videos you can help yourself to. And then it's a case of, can I get the permission of the church leader, a few people to join me, and why don't we have a go? And we do invite people and encourage people to sign up with us so that we can help them. It's more like a sort of family. We're not trying to build some sort of empire here. We're trying to help the church, and there is only one, to get really good practice within our communities so that anyone at any stage on their mental health journey would find a church the most, helpful place to belong. And I wouldn't say that's the case at the moment. So it'd be lovely, wouldn't it, if we had hundreds and hundreds of spaces where it doesn't need to be loads of people, even just one or two people who can and find some sort of solace there. And you do need at least 2 hosts from the church, and I would say 4 is better. So just getting a few people around you and getting them to understand that language with you would be good.
Yeah, a bit of a team. And I'm assuming that the space doesn't have to be in a church building.
No, it doesn't have to be. And in fact, sometimes better it isn't. But if you've got a church built, use what you've got. Basically, we've got some in allotments. We've got one in a disused betting shop. They're all over the place, really. And it's whatever God gives you. It's more about the welcome and the way in which, I would say, if at all possible, have a space that people will find it easy to get into and get out of. And a lot of our church buildings have architecture that is the opposite. So just making sure whatever we use, the most anxious and the most vulnerable person will find it easy to get through the door.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just encouraging otherliness, isn't it? And thinking about the other person. Great, thanks, Ruth. And Beth, just to finish, just thinking about, okay, maybe I love the idea of Renew Wellbeing, but not quite sure about venturing into that with both feet. But what about in a church community context? What can we do in Synergy churches to just kind of be a bit more, I suppose, pardon the pun, to be a bit more mindful about all of this? Are there any ways in which you've seen in your own church community, I suppose, your influence in that space as well, that's just helped to support people?
I think it's keeping mental health and our well-being on the agenda within churches, that we keep it as a topic of conversation. It's not just one talk and then it's dealt with. It is a continual thing. It's part of life. And having teenagers, it seems to be an increasing part of life, of anxiety and mental health. And so I think it's about us making sure we talk about it within our church settings. I think it's facilitating opportunity for people to see how we do it. Sometimes we've done the Renew Prayer, the morning one in church, for everyone to see what we do and how we practice it. I think it's you have facilitated retreat days. I think it's also about how we do that more locally within our churches to make it more accessible to more people. And so it's, for me, it's a challenge personally of how do I expand that within my own sphere of influence? How do I do that within my own church? And I think that's just a challenge for all of us, isn't it? How can we better share God's good mental health and well-being that he's given us, and how we journey through that through seasons, because seasons change, and just being open and honest with those around us and saying, look, we're all on a journey. Let's do this together.
Brilliant. Love it. Keeping it real. I always think that's that's an important thing, isn't it? And you talked about openness and honesty, and I think Christ inhabits those spaces, of course, doesn't he? He inhabits all spaces, but he really inhabits those spaces. So thanks for the challenge accepted, Beth. Certainly from my end. Well, great. Well, just want to thank you again. Thank you both, Beth and Ruth, for coming and sharing your story and your wisdom, and and there's and the invitation as well to think about this at the very least, to pray about it, to practice it, to invite other people into these spaces with us as well. So thank you so much, and we'll continue in Synergy to keep Renew Wellbeing in not just in the back of our minds, but in the forefront of our minds as well. And hope our paths cross soon as well, Ruth. And it's been great to see you again. And thanks again, and bless you guys.
Thanks, Gaynor.